Hello and welcome to Quality Food Safety 101. This is our third stage of hazard analysis, which is the seventh step in Codex Logic Sequence and the first principle of HACCP. At this stage, we'll talk about the control measures of each hazard, which have to be written in the hazard analysis stage. So, at the end of the second stage, we completed our risk assessment. Now, what happens at the end of risk assessment? Let me explain that to you. Let's suppose there were 20 process steps at the end of flow diagram. You identified 20 process steps. You took all of them through the risk assessment stage, and as a result of risk assessment, you will identify that out of 20, maybe 7 steps are significant hazards, or 7 steps are having significant hazards, and remaining 13 steps are not having significant hazards. Now, what will happen with those 13 steps are that those 13 steps will be controlled by prerequisites, and the remaining 7 significant hazards will go to the next stage of CCP determination. But before going to do that, we will now discuss about the stage 3 of hazard analysis, which is the control measures. So the control measures come through the prerequisite program, which is already implemented in the organization. This is the good hygiene practices or good manufacturing practices which we are supposed to implement before going to HACCP. They give us the control measure of each hazard. For example, one of the hazards which we considered in our earlier example during receiving was multiplication of microorganism during transportation from supplier if the temperature is not controlled during transportation. So the control measure for that hazard is that we need to first of all select good supplier. So supplier assurance program or supplier management program is a control measure which will enable us to control proper deliveries from suppliers. Another example which we took was improper cooking, which results into survival of microorganisms. So for that, the control measure will be monitoring of the cooking step, training of the staff, and also to have maybe automatic cooking mechanisms or automatic ovens which will cook the food properly and thoroughly and will not allow survival of microorganisms. So all these control measures which I just explained to you, they are part of the prerequisite program of good manufacturing practices and good hygiene practices through which we get the control measures. But remember, whenever you write a control measure in the HACCP plan, it must track back or it must refer back to the hazard which we are talking about. It cannot be that we are talking about survival hazard and mentioning a control measure of cleaning. Now, cleaning is not a control measure to control survival. Survival is all about temperature in this scenario of cooking. Or we are talking about the hazard of multiplication, which is a temperature based hazard in our scenario of receiving food, and the control measure which we are writing is about pest control, which is irrelevant here. So always the control measure should match the hazard. Now there can be a possibility that multiple layers of controls are applied to control one hazard, and there can also be a possibility that one or one control measure is controlling multiple hazards. For example, the supplier assurance program can control multiple types of hazards coming from the suppliers. It can be multiplication hazard, it can be contamination hazard, it can be the hazard of allergens. All these can be controlled through one system of supplier assurance or supplier management. On the other side, to control the hazard of survival, you can have multiple layers of controls, which is staff training, proper equipment, proper monitoring. All these can be there to control the hazard of survival. So both the scenarios can exist, and we need to be very careful while writing the control measures so that our system is secure and it actually makes sense basically. So this is how we do the control measure. So now let me cover the full hazard analysis in a very quick summary. This is how the table of hazard analysis looks like. So on your starting column, you will write all the processes. Then you will list all the hazards. After that, you do a risk assessment for each hazard, and then you write the control measures. At the end of this, you will know that certain hazards are significant, certain hazards are insignificant, and insignificant hazards will stop here. There will be no further study about those hazards, and they will be controlled through the prerequisite programs. But for the significant hazard, we'll take them to the next stage, which is the CCP determination or CCP identification stage. So that's it for the hazard analysis. This was a three stage or three series of videos covering one topic of hazard analysis. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. Do subscribe to the channel. This is for all of our benefit, and we look forward to catching you in the next video, which is about the CCP. Thank you.